Well, welcome everybody. It's great to have Ian Kennedy here, another of the past presidents, and it's my privilege to be interviewing and talking, chit-chatting to him today. So Ian, welcome.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's great to have the opportunity.
So before we go into talking about the IAFL, formerly known as the IAML, I thought it'd be interesting for listeners to hear about your career and how you got to where you got to, how you passed through your career. So can you tell us a bit about that?
I think my entire career has been absolutely serendipitous. Nothing planned, things just happen. I started life as an industrial advocate. Before I'd completed my law degree, I was working on the employer side. Then I went into private practice in a firm with a broad practice base, with a wide range of work, crime, light commercial, personal injuries, wills, estates, conveyancing, you name it, but primarily representing the unions who I had previously acted against, who came to me and said, well, now you're out in your own world, we would like you to look after our interests, which was great. It was very exciting. It was a time of real industrial development and some degree of unrest in Australia. But it was a national job and involved a lot of travel. And with a young family, that just wasn't compatible after a while. So I had to focus on other aspects of the practice. I had unexpected success with a white-collar criminal matter, where I got an acquittal for a very, very dodgy fellow, and somehow attracted a following in that area, kept me occupied for a while. I also did some matrimonial causes work, appearing as a solicitor advocate in our Supreme Court. And I was earning extra income teaching new graduates in our professional admission course. It's a long time ago, but in 1975, Australia introduced its No Fault Family Law Act legislation and created this new specialist court then, the Family Court of Australia, which was due to open its doors in January 1976. And I was asked to take on teaching this new legislation. My response was, I don't know anything about it. How on earth could I do that? To which the answer was, nobody else does either, so you might as well give it a go.
So you're well placed.
Yes, indeed. So I was put on a committee with two senior barristers to design and develop the course. Within a matter of a couple of months, they'd both been appointed as judges of the new court. So I was left holding the baby and on a very steep learning curve and creating the absolutely false impression that I had some expertise in the area. And I guess family law basically took over my life and practice from there, and it quickly became the principal focus of my professional life. And so here we are.
Fantastic. And what's really interesting is to start off with such a broad base, which I fear now lots of younger lawyers don't have that opportunity. They specialise much younger than I think people of another generation did.
And I think that's a real problem, that almost everyone these days who wants to practice family law grows up in the family law bubble. And it is very restrictive in many ways. And I think it stifles creativity and makes it far more difficult to deal with the more complex issues that arise with an open mind and a broader background.
Yeah, no, I agree. So tell us about 2 or 3 career highlights.
Oh, where do you start again? Look, of course, there's been any number of cases which have been significant in expanding the jurisprudence, creating new law, including one which was fundamental in affirming the powers of the family court to penetrate trust structures and treat the underlying assets as property available for division between the parties. That was a case we ran in the High Court of Australia and created great angst and chaos among those who practice in commercial and trust law, but much delight to those who practice in the family law arena. But my highlights relate far more to my involvement in both local, national and international bodies and enhancing the standing and effectiveness of the profession in the family law arena. Back in 1977, just a year into the operation of the new court, I became the foundation president of the Family Lawyers Association of Victoria, which was a body we created to engage the active involvement from all levels of the profession, the judiciary, the bar and solicitors, and with regular monthly meetings so we could all get together to see what was happening in the court, what direction things were heading in, what problems were arising, what could we do about them. And that was a fantastic thing. It attracted enormous pushback from the Victorian bar, which was horrified at the thought of barristers mingling with solicitors in an environment like that, which was what it was like in those days.
It was a very different time, wasn't it, early in those days?
Absolutely. But they backed off very quickly when the judges, who were also involved in the association, said, well, we're behind it, we're involved in it. We're very pleased to have that communication between us all, and we all learned together, and it was just a fantastic time, and very exciting, getting in on the ground floor like that in a totally new environment. I subsequently became a member of the executive and ultimately the chair of the family law section of the Law Council of Australia. And that was another exciting environment which created an opportunity to influence the development of family law in Australia, working with government, appearing before parliamentary committees, agitating for and achieving law reform, including the extension of parenting and property entitlements enjoyed by married couples to cohabitees and de facto partners. So we saw that legislative reform in Australia come to fruition, and many other, perhaps more minor ones. But I also, throughout that period, was served as editor of our leading practitioner journal, Australian Family Lawyer, for almost 3 decades. So it was perhaps number 2.
You were certainly very busy.
Yes. And finally, I think the greatest highlight was the opportunity to be involved in and ultimately lead the academy. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we go along.
We will indeed. And looking back, have you got any top tips for younger lawyers?
Well, things have changed an enormous amount, of course, and we're now living in a digital world governed by technology. But it's important, I think, never to lose sight of the fact that we're professionals and that we owe duties to our clients, our fellow lawyers, and the courts. I don't know whether they're tips or not, but I think there's a few important things to bear in mind. Don't be afraid to try new things or accept opportunities which might arise. Acknowledge that none of us knows everything. Most of us know very little, I've decided, until you sit down and think about it. So never stop exploring, inquiring, learning. Have the courage to think creatively and run novel arguments. And don't be dismayed if you get outcomes that are not what you would have hoped for or think your client deserves. We can't win everything. Even through the appeal process, we still sometimes can't win everything. So judges don't have our intellectual capacity very often and just don't get the point, do they?
No,
so
I really love those. I love those top tips. Any more?
Never forget that you're a member of a profession and act collegiately. I think the great strength of the law, and particularly and almost uniquely family law, is the willingness to share knowledge and experience. So take advantage of that, but also share your knowledge and solutions that might be achieved cooperatively for the benefit of the client. I think finally, communicate effectively and productively. The bane of my life is death by email. This is a production of an endless stream of monologues, not dialogue. So as I'm constantly exhorting my junior practitioners, pick up the phone and try to talk to your opponent. And remarkably, sometimes they turn out not to be the fount of all evil, and you can very often achieve unexpectedly positive things with a simple call.
Yeah, that's really great advice, because I think so many people hide behind email or scared of picking up the phone. But obviously, for those of us who were brought up in an era where we really only had the phone and then the introduction of the fax,
Yeah.
I think we really are so used to picking up the phone, and perhaps even meeting face to face to talk about cases, which is so productive. So I'm really glad you've highlighted that.
Yeah, I think that latter point is an important one too, that I will often say to my opponents, well, let's catch up for a cup of coffee and have a
Mm,
chat about this.
mm. Yeah,
Let's sit down and see whether we can work it through. And that can be remarkably effective, provided it's an opponent you can trust.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
sometimes you can't, sometimes you have to commit everything to writing. But
Hmm.
in the vast majority of cases, can be very productive to have that direct communication.
And in terms of career and life, Ian, do you have any advice that you would have given your younger self?
Ooh, really, I think more of the same, Susanna. It's, I think, don't get bogged down in the world of practice, I would have said to myself, and didn't get bogged down, but went beyond that. Get involved in the profession more generally, be open to opportunities and challenges, and have courage. Have a
Mhm.
go.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's been one of the main threads coming through these interviews, is people who are prepared to give things a go and just hope that
Mm,
they work and take risks, perhaps, but within certain parameters.
yeah,
Um,
yes.
And in terms of trying to achieve a work-life balance, so that's something that everybody's very keen to hear about, and it's something we're trying to strive for
Mm.
all the time. Did you manage it?
I think I still do in some ways, in a bizarre sort of way. As you know, my wife is an eminent psychiatrist. We both work very long hours and frequently at weekends. So, at one level, we have an element of workaholism in our lives, but we make time for and prioritize things outside our professional lives, including music of all sorts, from classical to jazz, whatever is going on, opera, theatre. We're generally out 2 or 3 nights a week doing
Hmm.
something or other as a break from what we're doing during the day. And we travel whenever we can, and that also gives a significant balance. When the children were younger, we managed to arrange our professional commitments so that we could be available to take part in their school and other activities. Although I tended always to find something that prevented me going to a school concert.
Oh dear.
Uh, but Sandra very kindly stepped in and did her
Brilliant.
duty. And we're very actively involved in the kids' lives, as we now are involved in the lives of our grandchildren. So, look, it helps that we both love what we do. So, work itself and the daily challenges it presents has its own rewards. But overall, we've managed to maintain a healthy relationship with work and with our lives beyond it.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. Thank you. And I'd like to turn now, if we can, to talk about the IAFL. And first of all,
Mm.
just looking back and reminding us how you first became involved with the IAFL, or IAML as it was then.
It was then, yes. Look, Suzanne, honestly, I don't really recall that. I've always had an international element in my practice. I was frequently in London, and over the years had a succession of door tenancies. Initially at One Gray's Inn Square, then Mitre Court before they closed down and moved over then to One Hare Court.
Mhm.
I was encouraged, I think mainly by my London colleagues and Peter Singer and others, to attend meetings of what was then the IAML as a guest. And I thought it was a marvellous organisation with highly talented practitioners. And I signed up some 30 years or so ago.
Mhm. And where and when were your meetings, Ian?
Well, I was in the chair from 2008 to 2010. Um, I was actually, this is a great honour from my perspective, the first president from the Southern Hemisphere, and I
Mhm.
think so far the only president from the Southern Hemisphere, and only the second non-chapter fellow after Jackie Leong to serve as president. My first meeting was in Vancouver, and the second was in Queenstown, New Zealand.
Excellent. Wow. Both quite far-flung places. I suppose
Well,
Queenstown close to you, however.
close to me, but that wasn't the point. That we were trying to find an attractive destination in the Southern Hemisphere,
Hmm.
because the Academy at that stage had always been very heavily oriented to Europe and the USA, and
Hmm.
almost all the preceding presidents had been from one or other of those chapters. So that was the main purpose of Queenstown. The purpose of Vancouver was to find a destination which was accessible and convenient. And we
Hmm.
had a problem at that time, as then I'll talk a little bit more about the issues that were confronting the Academy, but particularly the younger fellows were finding it very expensive to get to
Right.
meetings. I tried to choose somewhere that was pretty readily accessible, not too
Hmm.
expensive, but also an attractive destination with plenty to see and do.
And both very attractive destinations. So what are the highlights of your presidency?
Well, where to start? I became president at a time when the Academy was really at a crossroads in terms of its development, its growth, and its future direction, and when its finances were in a very shaky state. So I was confronted with a number of challenges that we really had to address with some urgency. Firstly, of course, stabilising and securing the financial position, but also improving our governance, modernising our accounting and reporting processes, and professionalising the administration. Also encouraging greater member involvement, particularly from younger fellows, and outreach to other jurisdictions, which has been an ongoing theme over the succeeding years as we've gradually expanded the Academy. Improving and placing a greater focus on the educational component of the meetings. Historically, when it was a much smaller organisation, the Academy had been a bit of a travel club, great destinations to go to, sometimes a fairly token educational program that went with it, but it really needed a rethink about that. And if we're going to be a serious organisation and be taken seriously, then we really had to lift our game on the educational front. It was also a challenge in creating greater cohesion between the parent body and the chapters. That hadn't really been happening. Each of the chapters, and there are only effectively two then, Europe and the US, had been marching to the beat of their own drum, and the Central Academy had to manage and balance all of that. And also reinforcing and expanding the role of the Academy as providing recognised excellence and leadership in the international family law community, again, trying to establish us as an organisation which should and could be taken seriously. So to follow through on those things, I implemented the Academy's first strategic planning meeting in San Antonio in Texas in 1989. And we undertook the first comprehensive survey of fellows to get feedback about their views on the Academy, its purpose, its role, their relationship to it, what they wanted from it, what it was providing, what it wasn't providing, and to test a few options for future directions. I also took steps to stabilise the financial position. Some of those steps were unpopular, some were okay. I sort of cut out unnecessary executive meetings, which were expensive. We reduced the number of executive meetings in total, ensured that committee meetings were held in association with chapter meetings and the annual meeting rather than the standalone meetings. Recruited an assistant treasurer, a young fellow called Tom Sasser, who I dragged into the role very reluctantly on his part to support our long-serving and much-loved former treasurer, George Stern, and to transition into the treasurer role, which he, as you know, has done just enormously successfully and has been so
Absolutely.
fundamental to the ongoing success of the Academy in the coming years. Highly controversially, I also introduced sponsorship for meetings and activities of the Academy, which created a bit of outrage at the time, and it commenced with the Vancouver meeting. But of course, over the years, it's become increasingly important in sustaining our financial viability. And I appointed Donna Goddard as executive director to help establish a professional and streamlined administration. That was one of the best things I ever did in my tenure, because we were able to work together very efficiently, and her commitment to all of that really helped rescue what was a fairly dodgy situation at that stage and get us on a professionalised footing. I also implemented a rewrite and modernisation of the bylaws, and particularly emphasising the importance of applicants for fellowship meeting the criteria of fellowship, and beefed up the educational content of the meetings. And that sort of had the effect of encouraging firms to send their partner fellows and staff on the basis that it really could be justified from the educational component. Didn't mean we don't have a lot of fun at the meetings, but I think we do get a lot of them out of them professionally and educationally these days. So it was certainly a demanding term of office, but it's continued to bear fruit through all of the wonderful leaders of the Academy who have followed and have maintained that momentum, but also greatly developed and expanded all those various initiatives over the succeeding years. And I think we now have a very vibrant, viable and stable and financially stable organisation.
It's great to hear all those things. You did so much. And when I've spoken to other presidents, they've certainly credited you with being pivotal in turning the Academy round. So thank you very much for that. So having been involved with the Academy for such a long time, can you give 3 reasons to somebody to join the Academy? What would your reasons be?
I think membership of a network of highly experienced and highly regarded practitioners, which has spread throughout most major jurisdictions in the world, the collegiality of the organisation, that's open, welcoming, supportive, and the professional skills it helps to engender. And I think above all, the enormous benefit, Suzanne, of actually knowing the person with whom you may be working in another jurisdiction or to whom you may be recommending your colleagues. You can have absolute confidence in their skills, their expertise, but also their personalities, because you actually know them.
Absolutely. And knowing now how many international cases there are, it's absolutely crucial to have that network across the world, really.
Yes, and what would we do without it? And I
Yeah.
think that is just a marvellous contribution that the Academy is able to make.
So now looking forwards, do you have a vision for the IFL? What should it be doing? What would you be advising if you were on the exec?
Well, I think it's now in a very healthy position. It's grown and continues to grow at a very impressive rate. We've got a new chapter, the Asia Pacific chapter, a prospective new South Central America Caribbean chapter, maybe an African chapter, fellows from many new jurisdictions. Now, all of that is highly commendable, but I think it's essential not to lose sight at any level of the major defining characteristic of the Academy, and that is that all fellows are recognised by their peers as well as among the most experienced and skilled family law practitioners in their jurisdictions, with a substantial and continuing international element in their practice and a demonstrated track record of competence in international family law. I think that is absolutely fundamental, and there is a little bit concerned about the danger of recruiting too broadly, making it an open door organisation. And I know that it can be criticised for being elitist by having those standards, but that really is the substance of the academy. It's really what it is all about. And without that, it can be just any old organisation that gets together and has fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I know you're still working, so tell us a bit about your life now.
Well, we're well, as you've heard, we keep pretty busy.
Yeah.
We're into experiences rather than things. We don't need to collect things these days. When we're not working, we do like to travel. We have three criteria in place. We want to go to places that are interesting and different, places where we haven't been, and places where not too many other people go. So over recent years, we've spent time in Ethiopia, various parts of West Africa. We've done a complete voyage of the Northwest Passage from Greenland through to East Russia. Been to Antarctica a couple of times, Bhutan, Borneo,
Wow.
and most recently, just before Santiago, a week in the Pantanal in Brazil, searching for the elusive jaguar and other interesting beasts.
Wow.
So,
So what have you got coming up? Any trips
well,
planned?
yes, I thought we might go looking for tigers in India over Christmas. And beyond that, we haven't got too far into next year yet. But there's a few things on the way. And of course, if we can tie these things in with an IAFL meeting, so much the better. And that worked very well with Brazil, and then on to Santiago for what was a terrific meeting.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Ian. I feel as though I've learnt so much, and not only about you personally, but also the organisation. So thank you for all that you've done, and thanks for talking to me today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. It is great to see you, and let's look forward to our next meeting.
Yeah.